dinner, my dad announced your sister is successful and responsible, unlike you. He claimed, she doesn't need help from anyone. I replied, perfect, my $2,500 monthly transfers end today. The golden child panicked. Your sister is successful and responsible, unlike you, my father William announced during dinner, raising his wine glass toward Brittany. She doesn't need help from anyone. I sat there at the mahogany dining table in our family home in Charlotte, North Carolina, feeling the familiar sting of his words. The candlelight flickered across Brittany's smug smile as she basked in William's praise. She looked stunning as always, her designer blazer perfectly coordinated with her expensive jewelry. Everything about her screamed success. Brittany climbed the corporate ladder through hard work, unlike your freelance dabbling, William continued, his voice filled with pride. Look at her condo, her Lexus, her wardrobe. She's completely self-reliant. I quietly cut into my grilled chicken, keeping my expression neutral. 2 years of these dinner conversations had taught me to stay silent while William celebrated Brittany's supposed achievements and dismissed my work as worthless computer games. She's making real money in digital marketing management, he went on. Not like Lauren sitting at home playing around on computers all day. Brittany beamed at the comparison. Thank you, Dad. I've worked really hard to get where I am. It feels amazing to be financially independent. I nearly choked on my sweet tea. Financially independent. The woman who had begged me for $2,500 just last week for her credit card payments. Excellent, I said quietly, setting down my fork. Then she won't need my $2,500 monthly support anymore. The words hung in the air like smoke from an extinguished candle. Brittany's confident smile disappeared instantly, replaced by a look of panic. William stopped mid-chew, his eyebrows furrowing in confusion. What did you just say? He asked slowly. I said Brittany won't need my monthly transfers anymore since she's so successful and independent. I kept my voice calm, watching my sister's face drain of color. Brittany's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. She had spent 2 years building this image of corporate success while secretly living off my earnings. Now her carefully constructed facade was crumbling with just one sentence. Lauren, we agreed to keep that private, Brittany whispered desperately, her voice barely audible. Keep what private? William demanded, looking between us with growing alarm. The room felt charged with tension. I could see Brittany calculating how much she had to lose if the truth came out. Her entire identity as the successful daughter, the one William was proud of, the one who didn't need family help, was about to shatter. This was the moment I had been unconsciously waiting for. 2 years of being dismissed, 2 years of watching Brittany take credit for a lifestyle I was funding. 2 years of William's constant criticism of my work. The golden child was about to fall from her pedestal, and I was the one holding the rope. My name is Lauren Mitchell and I'm 30 years old. For the past 5 years, I've been running a successful digital marketing consultancy from my modest apartment in downtown Charlotte. While my family sees me as an underachiever who plays around on computers, I've quietly built an empire providing comprehensive digital marketing solutions to small and medium businesses across the Southeast. My business, Mitchell Digital Strategies, started small but has grown beyond my wildest dreams. I specialize in helping companies establish their online presence, manage social media campaigns, optimize websites for search engines, and develop comprehensive digital marketing strategies. My client roster includes dental practices, law firms, restaurants, boutique retailers, and service companies who need professional marketing but can't afford the big agencies. Last year alone, I generated $520,000 in revenue. My profit margins are healthy at 65%, and my client retention rate is 92%. The irony isn't lost on me. While William dismisses my computer dabbling, I make more in a month than most people see in a year. $2,500, I repeated clearly, every month for the past 2 years. $60,000 total to cover Brittany's rent, car payments, credit cards, and shopping habits. William's face went through several color changes, from confusion to disbelief to something approaching anger. That's impossible. Brittany makes good money at her marketing position. She makes $42,000 a year managing social media accounts for a small agency, I said matter-of-factly, which is a perfectly respectable salary, but not nearly enough to support the lifestyle she's been living. Lauren, please stop, Brittany whispered, tears starting to form in her eyes. But I was done protecting her image. Her luxury condo costs $2,200 a month. Her Lexus payment is $580. Add in utilities, insurance, credit card minimums, and daily expenses, and she's been short about $2,500 monthly to maintain the standard of living Dad has been praising. William looked at Brittany with growing horror. Is this true? Brittany's carefully applied makeup was starting to run as tears rolled down her cheeks. I was going to pay her back. I just needed time to get established. Established in what? William demanded. You told me you were promoted to marketing director last year. I manage 4 social media accounts, Brittany admitted quietly. It's not really director-level management. The truth was finally spilling out. For 2 years, Brittany had been crafting elaborate stories about her career advancement, creating fictional promotions and salary increases that existed only in her imagination and William's proud retellings to friends and neighbors. So while I've been telling everyone how successful you are, how independent you are, you've been living off your sister's charity, William's voice was rising. It wasn't charity, Brittany protested weakly. It was a loan. A loan with no repayment terms, no interest, and no end date, I corrected. A loan you never mentioned when you were letting Dad use me as a cautionary tale about responsibility and success. William turned to me with a look I had never seen before. It wasn't his usual disappointment or dismissive irritation. It was something closer to shame. How much money do you actually make with your computer work? He asked quietly. I had never planned to reveal this information, but the moment seemed right. Last year, I grossed $520,000 through my consulting business. After expenses and taxes, I cleared about $320,000. The number hit William like a physical blow. He sat back in his chair, staring at me as if seeing me for the first time. Brittany was crying openly now, realizing that her secret was completely exposed and her image as the successful daughter was permanently destroyed. William's wine glass slipped from his fingers and shattered against his dinner plate. The sound echoed through our suddenly too quiet dining room as William processed what I had just revealed. $520,000, he repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. That's gross revenue, I clarified. My net profit was around $320,000, but yes. Brittany was hyperventilating at the other end of the table. Lauren, you can't cut me off now. My rent is due in 5 days. I have credit card payments, car insurance, my gym membership. Maybe you should have thought about that before spending 2 years letting Dad believe you were more successful than me, I replied calmly, pulling out my phone. I'm canceling the automatic transfer right now. My fingers moved across the banking app with practiced ease. With a few taps, I deleted the recurring $2,500 monthly transfer that had been funding Brittany's fake lifestyle. There, I said, showing her the screen. Transfer cancelled. William was staring at me like I had grown a second head. You make more in a year than I made as a high school principal in 5 years. And you've been sitting here letting me lecture you about responsibility. You never asked about my income, I pointed out. You just assumed that because I work from home, I must be unsuccessful. I need specifics about your business, William said, settling back into his chair with a new intensity. I want to understand exactly what I've been dismissing all these years. Brittany looked between us with growing desperation. She was realizing that William's attention had completely shifted away from her crisis and toward understanding my success. I started Mitchell Digital Strategies 5 years ago, I began. I noticed that small and medium businesses were getting crushed by their competition because they couldn't afford the big marketing agencies like Ogilvy or Saatchi. Most digital marketing services are either cheap DIY solutions that don't work or enterprise-level consulting priced for Fortune 500 companies. William leaned forward, actually listening to me for perhaps the first time in my adult life. So I got certified in Google Ads, Facebook marketing, SEO, and web development. I built relationships with design contractors and copywriters, and created a service model that provides agency-level marketing at prices regional businesses can afford. And people actually pay for this? William asked. Dad, digital marketing is a massive industry, I explained. Companies spend billions annually trying to reach customers online. The problem is that most agencies focus on either huge corporations or basic social media posting. I target serious businesses who need professional-grade marketing but don't want to pay Manhattan agency prices. Brittany was scrolling frantically through her phone, probably calculating her monthly expenses and realizing how quickly her world was about to collapse. My average contract value is around $3,200 per month, I continued. I maintain roughly 140 active clients across all service tiers. My gross margin runs about 65% after contractor costs and software licensing. William was doing math in his head. 140 clients times $3,200 is nearly $500,000 monthly. That can't be right. That would be my peak capacity, I clarified. My actual average is closer to $43,000 monthly, which gives me the $520,000 annual gross I mentioned. The magnitude of my business was finally sinking in. William had spent years treating me like an unemployed college graduate playing video games in my apartment when I was actually running a $500,000 operation. "Where do you work from?" William asked, his voice filled with newfound curiosity. "My apartment has a dedicated office space, but most of my work is done remotely. I manage client relationships, campaign development, analytics reporting, and strategic planning. The creative work happens through partnerships with specialized contractors I've built relationships with over the years." Brittany suddenly looked up from her phone with panic in her eyes. "Lauren, my credit card minimum payments alone are $1,400 a month. Without your transfers, I can't even make the minimums." "Maybe you shouldn't have bought so much designer clothing," I suggested. "Or maybe you should have been honest about your situation instead of building a lie that required constant financial support." "But what am I supposed to tell people?" Brittany wailed. "Everyone thinks I'm successful." "Tell them the truth," William said harshly. "Tell them you've been living a lie funded by the sister you and I both dismissed as unsuccessful." The weight of the revelation was clearly affecting him. Every conversation we had ever had about my career was being recontextualized. Every time he had criticized my work choices, every time he had held up Brittany as an example, every time he had suggested I get a real job was now revealed as ignorant and hurtful. "I need to call your Uncle Frank," William said suddenly. "Why?" Brittany asked with dread. "Because last month I told him that Lauren should follow Brittany's example and find a traditional career path. I told him that Brittany's marketing position was proof that traditional employment was more stable than entrepreneurship. My Uncle Frank, William's brother, was a successful restaurant owner who had always been supportive of my unconventional career path. He had probably held his tongue when William made those comments, but he must have known how misguided his perspective was. The reversal was complete. William's entire understanding of his daughters had been flipped upside down, and he was struggling to reconcile his assumptions with reality. 3 months later, I sat in my expanded home office, watching my bank account grow instead of shrink by $2,500 each month. The money I had been sending to Brittany was now being reinvested into hiring additional contractors and expanding Mitchell Digital Strategies to serve clients in Tennessee and South Carolina. Brittany had moved into a modest one-bedroom apartment 15 minutes from her marketing job. She had sold most of her designer clothing and jewelry to cover her credit card payments, and I heard through William that she was working weekends at a local bookstore to make ends meet. The most satisfying part wasn't watching Brittany struggle with reality. It was watching William come to terms with how wrong he had been about both of us. He called me every few days now, asking detailed questions about my business operations. Not critical questions or suggestions for improvement, but genuine curiosity about how I had built something successful while he was dismissing it as worthless. "I told Frank about your real revenue numbers," he admitted during one of our calls. He laughed at me for 10 minutes straight. "Uncle Frank always knew you were underestimating me," I replied. "He said he tried to tell me several times, but I wouldn't listen." William's voice carried a weight of regret. "He said I was being an arrogant fool who couldn't recognize success because it didn't look like what I expected." That sounded exactly like something Frank would say. He had never been shy about calling out family members when they were being ridiculous. "The worst part," William continued, "is realizing how many people I told that Brittany was the responsible one and you needed to get your act together. I was bragging about her corporate success to everyone. And now you have to figure out how to explain that everything you said was wrong," I finished for him. "That the daughter you were criticizing was actually more successful than you ever dreamed, and the daughter you were praising was living in a fantasy funded by her sister's generosity." The greatest victory wasn't watching Brittany face the consequences of her deception, but rather witnessing William finally recognize and respect the business empire I had built while he was looking the other way. As I reinvested the recovered $2,500 monthly into expanding Mitchell Digital Strategies, I realized that William's years of dismissive comments had inadvertently become the fuel for my determination to prove that success comes in many forms, not just the traditional paths he understood and valued. Sometimes the most satisfying revenge is simply allowing the truth to speak louder than the lies that once defined you.